One of the biggest misconceptions about architecture is that there is always a correct answer. There isn't. After years doing architectures in payments across different kind of enterprise systems, core banking platforms, payment gateways, medical software, and several other types of enterprise platforms. There is something I have discovered. And what is that thing that I have discovered? Every architectural decision is a sacrifice. I want to say that again. Every architectural decision is a sacrifice. It doesn't matter what you plan to do. By the time you look at your architecture at the end of the day, you will realize you have given something. Every choice you make in that your architecture gives you something and takes something else away. So it's a choice. It's a give and take. Architecture is not just stringent one way. It is a choice. It's a give and take. So the question isn't what is the best decision, because that's what people ask. But that shouldn't be the question when it comes to architecture. Really, the question should be, which problem are we willing to live with, or are you willing to live with, among all of these problems that could emanate when you're trying to create an architecture? Which one of them can you live with? Architecture is choosing your problems. Earlier in my career, when I was just starting off, I thought architecture was about better solutions. I believed enough intelligence, if you have enough intelligence poured into your architecture, enough design poured into your architecture, design almost every part of the system, and if you have enough experience poured into your architectural practice, you could eliminate trade-offs. But you don't even need to have trade-offs, because architecture is 100% perfect. But that was a fable, if I can use that word. Because by the time I entered into payment, I realized it was different. That one thing that came up very, pronounced for me was that payment destroyed that illusion that was in my head. The architecture can be perfect. It destroyed it. Because when it comes to payment system will force choices on you, even as you make your architectural decision. There are so many areas of payment system that you have no choice than to make trade-offs. Retry, for example. You try to retry, you risk duplicates if you're not careful with your retry. There's a possibility that you will duplicate payments. You try to fail immediately, a transaction that have not gone through successfully, you risk losing valid transactions. And that could be a problem for the company. You could lose customer, you could lose money, you could lose credibility. So there's a lot that you will lose doing that. Oh, you want to wait and see what plans out. You also risk uncertainty, because while waiting, the transaction might not have successful, or the transaction might have been successful. You don't know. So you create uncertainty to your customers. They don't know what is happening. So when you look at all of these angles, then you begin to wonder. You begin to realize there wasn't a perfect answer. The only thing that you can see is consequences. You take this action, this is the consequence. You take this action, this is the consequence. You take that action, that's the consequence. So when you begin to see that, you begin to wonder, okay, what do I do then? But you need to understand that every action, each of the actions you could take, lead to different risk. One of the strongest examples of this came while I was working with the team on Swerve. The settlement took multiple iterations. We have to have discussions forth and back. Not because the people were incompetent, not at all. As a matter of fact, we had the best engineers, the best settlement officers that have been working in the bank that came into the company to work with us. So we had great experiences working on the project, on the platform. So it's not about they were incompetent because different groups valued different outcomes. That was where the problem is. That was where the risks were coming up. Different groups, they want different realities, different outcomes. For example, finance wanted reconciliation. They want to be able to reconcile the system, the transactions across the system. That's finance. I remember operations as well. They wanted reliability. No matter what happens, the system must remain reliable 100%. So, transaction must flow, must be successful, must work perfect. So for operations, they don't want failure. They don't want to be go adding calls for a transaction that didn't went through or that failed midway. But for business, they wanted speed. They want to sell speed. They want to go everywhere. I'm talking about how fast you can transfer and it gets to the other end in milliseconds. But for us as engineering, we wanted correctness. It should be correct. There's nothing like precision loss when it comes to money. So you can't have 10, for example, 10 naira 2044 kobo. It's not possible. That's not correct money. So correctness was key for engineering. And everyone was right. Everyone was right. And that fact that everyone was right was what made it difficult for us to reach conclusion. Was what made it difficult for us to be able to put things in the proper perspectives. Now, this is what I learned looking at all of this, that trade-offs are not so many times technical. It's about the organization around the platform or the product that you are building. That brings me back to many years later where I currently work now. I mean, during one of our projects, a postgrad migration project, that same lesson that I learned during Swift appeared again. You see, when you talk to many engineers, many architects, many technical leaders, they will tell you such a project, a technical project. As a matter of fact, even products. I remember talking to the product teams in our company, and they say, "Oh, those are technical. Those are technical." But the truth of the matter is that they are not. All of these projects are not just technical projects. They are risk management projects. Risk management projects. Because what you're doing, you are making decisions that involve trade-offs across systems, across teams. First of all, you want to move faster, you're going to increase risk. If you want to deploy, you want to deliver the project, the postgrad project, like deliver it like now, what happens is that you increase the risk of the project. If you move slower and say, let's do it and be very careful and do it so that it's very, almost 100% on point, you increase cost, right? Because that would mean more engineers. We were doing it with external contractors, so that would mean paying more for their time working with us. Oh, you want to make more changes. For example, change the database configuration. For example, change this, change, because we bought in TLX, SSL communication with the database. We bought in some ad guarding of the database. But if we go increase it astronomically to make sure we can take care of everything, we will increase uncertainty on the project as well. And if you say, "Oh no, I don't want to increase uncertainty. I don't want to protect the system. Let's just change it," you reduce the value. At the end of the day, you reduce the value of the project. So, there was no perfect path for us to follow. There was no clear, perfect path. So it was more about trade-offs here and there for us to get to where we are going. And what I would call that is acceptable risk. Because we had to now begin to look at what risk can we carry. You know, engineers often become frustrated with architects. I understand why. I so much understand. Because engineers want clarity. Engineers want, tell me, A goes to B, B goes to C, and we get D. Clear. But for architects, they often answer, it depends. Because there is always a dependency they are measuring against. And that is the reality. So engineer, it sounds like our architect is just, it sounds like avoidance. They're not trying to commit. But when you become responsible for outcomes, you understand more that it's not just about avoidance. It depends. It's often most at times the honest answer that is available from architects. Why? Because architects lives in trade-offs. What they do all the time is about trade-offs. There is no absolutes with architecture. There is no absolute. It's about trade-offs here and there. You need to be aware that every architectural decisions consistently follow the same pattern. Every one of them. Gain something, lose something. That is it. No two way around it. Gain flexibility, lose simplicity. It's a balance between the two. If you gain so much flexibility, you lose simplicity so much as well. So you have to balance it. Gain control, you lose speed. If you want to make sure you control everything, you begin to lose speed. You gain scalability, then you should be ready to lose predictability of what a system can do. There is always a cost. When it comes to architecture, there is always a cost to bear. If there are no downsides, it means that probably you haven't found the trade-off yet. The hardest architectural skill isn't technology. It isn't coding. Not at all. It isn't cloud like people make a noise about. It's not even microservices. The hardest skill an architect must have is judgment. That's why experience is key. Judgment knowing which trade-offs matter when it comes to this system. Which trade-offs don't matter. An architect must be able to differentiate between these two scenarios. Because architecture ultimately becomes decision making under uncertainty. Nobody teaches that in diagrams. It comes from experience. That is why great architects comes from experience. You don't come out of the university and become a great architect. No. It comes from somewhere. Experience. Looking back across my career, the biggest lesson for me wasn't technical. No, not at all. It wasn't about frameworks. No. It was this. There are no perfect architectural decisions. Only trade-offs. Only consequences. Yeah. No, no single one, no perfect. Only choices. The choices that you are making. And the quality of an architect is most of the time often measured by which trade-offs they choose. Great architects don't find perfect answers. They choose acceptable sacrifices. In my next video, I will talk about the realization that changed how I begin to view engineers, how I evaluate engineers. Yes, code is part of how to measure them, but there's a day that came where I stopped measuring just code. If you are interested in architecture, beyond framework, beyond patterns, beyond technology, that you can learn from books and from other videos, but you want to really get into the mind of an architect, subscribe. Because real architecture begins where certainty ends.